Now, I'm sorry, I'm not sure whether you're able to read that. One of the issues in US has been the unemployment problem has been attributed to the lessening in manufacturing, to the jobs having shifted to China and elsewhere, and Barack Obama got through the presidency promising to bring back manufacturing jobs. So there is a developed economy that recognizes that manufacturing has to play a role. And fortunately, some tremendous developments in manufacturing, which we should talk about, is helping the jobs to go back to US. Likewise, in China, it has been only due to the manufacturing GDP. Germany's growth is highly technological, in spite of the fact that it has come down somewhat. Germany has come down somewhat, but its population growth, it's able to manage. There's hardly any population growth in Germany. They've gone into a different context of manufacturing, high technology, very high technology, high export oriented, so they're able to survive. But the other two countries, Japan and UK, are in recession. Japan and UK are in recession. So countries that have gone off the manufacturing focus are suffering. Germany could survive because it's changed its emphasis on manufacturing, has gone into high tech. And USA is suffering, but China is doing very well. So there is a relevance of manufacturing in the growth of an economy. There is evidence. Brookings Institute, which is perhaps one of the most respected think tanks in the world, they have come out in one of their papers, it's available on the internet, that manufacturing, and this is an advice that Brookings is giving to the US government, that manufacturing pays much better on an average than services. It's a big source of innovation. Ludhiana has been, for instance, a big source of innovation 20 years ago, and still continues. I mean, some of the most successful stories, Hero or Airtel, are originated from innovators here. It helps to reduce trade deficit. We have a huge problem on that. We cannot just export services forever. We need to export products to be able to reduce trade deficit. And there are emerging opportunities in the clean economy, such as recycling and green energy. So there are a lot of emerging opportunities that are available in the manufacturing sector. This is from Brookings, who have advised the US government to look at manufacturing very seriously. But there is a shift, there is a paradigm shift in the way we look at manufacturing. From the old industrial revolution days to the robotics, second industrial revolution, we now have what is called a third industrial revolution of the 21st century. And that rides on four components, four trendsetters. One is the digitization of manufacturing. What are its implications we'll come to, but most of us now are aware of the power of the IT in bringing down costs, in reducing waste, in improving designs, in cutting down the time from concept to the marketing. That's happening. There's a decreasing labor component. Why are we here justifying labor component? But that's because the labor that's left behind needs to be far more competent and knowledgeable than what we have right now. So there is, whilst there may be an overall reduction in numbers, the quality of the labor is taking a paradigm shift. This, again, this is from The Economist, argues for the power of the cluster. And Ludhiana is perhaps an innovator. Today that magazine talks proudly of 100 clusters in China which will never go, whatever be the cost implications of labor. There is one cluster for socks, 3,000 units manufacturing only socks. And he says the power of manufacturing is in the power of clusters. And Ludhiana started it many years ago when he took the lead in the light engineering field. So again, Economist says the world has come back and clusters are going to determine the future growth of hubs and manufacturing potential. And finally, the most interesting, which the gentleman here is from US, and working for a company there, I forgot to note down the company, is the additive manufacturing, which is, I don't want to go into the technology of it, but these four components are going to impact, I mean just briefly, what's going to happen is because of digitization of manufacturing, we're going to go away from assembly line manufacturing to knowledge workers. That's going to be happening. The size of plants are going to decrease. Ludhiana benefits. Size is no longer required. Small plants with digitization can produce as much effectively at cost. Customization, as we call it. You can go for mass customization, you don't have to mass produce, and make profits. That's the trend. Likewise, in decreasing labor costs, again from assembly line, we're getting into knowledge workers. The power of the cluster, Ludhiana knows best. Only thing that Vijay and I were wondering, what happened? Why has this growth not kept pace? Why haven't other clusters come in Ludhiana? And additive manufacturing is perhaps a unique opportunity for the sector here to look at and be a leader in being able to establish it in India, additive manufacturing. Additive manufacturing is just like a printer that manufactures the product rather than batch processing. So this is the impact of the third revolution. We need manufacturing, but we need it of a different type. We need it of a different paradigm shift in the way we manufacture. I'd like to rest our case on manufacturing by saying that if we want to sustain a growth of 8% plus, we need to refocus on manufacturing. Government is aware of it. And there is a paradigm shift in the processes, the so-called third revolution. This requires knowledge inputs which are very different from the present body of knowledge available in schools, colleges, and technical institutes. But most importantly, why we have to look at manufacturing is this is the only way that we can solve the huge problem which we call population imperative. What is that? Today, or let's say about a year ago, about 330 million people are in this school-going age. 71 million are pensioners. 0 to 4 are 106 million, and 219 have opted out, housewives or people who have opted out of the work market for various reasons. One of the reasons being that Narega gives them enough money for 100 days, so they don't want to work otherwise also. So there are 219 people, these are all government statistics, who have opted out of the work market. But that still leaves, out of a population of 1.2 billion, that still leaves a sizable number. What are they doing? 338 million men and 129 million women are in the employment market, 467 million. That's the balance of 1.2 billion. But out of this, according to the government, about 459 are employed, which means we have an unemployment of about 10 million. I think these statistics, since they come from government, I have to quote, but we have our own way of analyzing it. But what is this 467 million people who are in the, or 459 who are actually working? What is the composition of that labor? Let's look at some of the scenario in out of that 459, 94% are in informal sector. So all the employees who work in your Ludhiana complexes, small scale, big scale, in the rest of the country, constitute only 6% out of this 459 million, which is about 26 million. The balance are in the unorganized sector, actually below poverty level, which the government will not recognize. But the challenge is, every year from now, because of the demographic dividend that we keep talking about, every year 13 million people are going to be added into this job market. They can't opt out. They can't. Narega can take only so much. Now already there is an audit on Narega and what do we do, etc. So the government cannot be feeding everyone forever. And every year 13 million are going to be added. And what is our training capacity? 3.1 million per annum. We are able to train 3.1 million people. We need an entire paradigm shift in manufacturing. We need to train our people, and the capacity that we have is 3.1. Over 60 to 70% of this is the public, is the ITIs and other government institutions. The private sector is still a minority in this. That's a huge gap, and that's the opportunity that we would like to address. The context is that there are very poor, as I told you, 22%. We had a phenomenal jobless growth. Actually, there's an interesting article by Professor Rangarajan of the Economic Council of Advisors to the Prime Minister, who has said that actually the last 5 years, the total people in the job market have come down, though our growth has gone up at 8%. That's because productivity has increased and the sort of jobs that we are generating is not in proportion to the growth in GDP. So it's as from a figure from a luminary like Dr. Rangarajan is a statement that we have actually growth, but it has not created jobs. It's been a jobless growth. That's his word actually. And this is a typical Indian tradition. I mean, I was forced by my father to study in college and then go and do a PA and go and do a PG because that's the way you will secure yourself a secure future. Somehow, wages are linked to education. I mean, the managing director's driver, if he can speak a little better English than somebody else, he would stand to get a more salary than the drivers in the rest of the organization. We seem to value this education, link our wages to that. This is relevant because if you do not do something to that education, workers will continue to be living at subsistence wages. And there is a decline in technical skills. That's evident. That was mentioned by Mr. Gautam also. So can the education sector help? We've seen the justification for manufacturing. We've seen how the composition of the labor force is really skewed towards lack of education and actually poor. 22% of them are poor. We've seen the phenomenon of jobless growth, and therefore we conclude that we have to do something about educating this mass of 13 million who are going to add to the 467 million who are already there. Can our education sector address it? In terms of supply, our Indian education sector is the third largest in the world. In terms of demand, we are the largest in the world. We have two sectors, the formal sector and the informal. Formal would be those that are regulated by UGC or Central Board of Higher Education or the state agency. And the informal sector are the ITIs under the Ministry of Labour and others, which are not as strictly regulated. So the formal sector is over-regulated, but the informal sector has scalability problems. In the formal sector, K-12 as we say, kindergarten to class 12, primary, secondary education, whatever the government may say, the reality amongst academicians, and they will vouch for it, and the higher education, UG, PG and doctoral and vocational, actually only 50 to 75% of the eligible population are really going through formal education in school. We have said that we have reached 99%, they ignored the dropouts. And one major reason for this low is that if you see the skewness between girls and boys in rural India especially, and also in urban India, the girl, what this means, 50 to 75 means, 50 to 75% of those who should be going to school are only going to school. The others do not have a school education when they till class 12. And out of this, if you were to see the female ratio, it is as high as 75%. Only 25% of girls in our country go through a formal education. But the government will say we have reached 95%. Some papers also say 100%. That's also. Undergraduate, this is official 5th plan document. 11 out of 100 who can go to college really go to college. 11 out of 100. 89 of them do not get the benefit of a college degree. Why? We can discuss that, but we are not interested in that. We want to quickly make our case as to what we should do. Now the government says it has gone up to 20%. I strongly suspect that. A little bit of reading I've been doing in this sector. They say it has reached 20. China has reached 30. VET is negligible. VET is negligible. That's the situation of our Indian education system, where if at all the government is committed to Millennium Development Goals, we have to make that K-12 space, every child who is eligible must get education. Right to Education Act was also passed by Mr. Sibal as one of these moves. So any funding that the government would do henceforth will be to meet this 100% target. After that, if there is any money, and they have to put a lot of money, they'll put it here. In my own Osmania University in Hyderabad, where I stay, I'm told that for the last 10 years they have not recruited a single faculty for replacement because they don't have running capital. Another statistics, out of the allotment to that the UGC makes to all these universities, 385 and growing, just Delhi University, JN University and some of these so-called schools of excellence get 80% of that allotment. The balance 20% is divided amongst all the other universities. And that's a very sorry state of affairs. And there's not going to be much funds coming in. Government is taxing, they have education cess, they have this. But the money will go only to primary sector. This is from an investment banker, and that should interest us, Infrastructure Development Finance Corporation, IDFC. It says that the value of education, if you see the value of the K-12 space is about 169,000 crores in the year 2011. Higher education is 157,000 crores. This is the students' fees that you get into the system. The vocational is quite low, less than 10%. But look at the growth. They forecast a growth of 25% compounded annual growth rate in that area. Whereas in K-12 and higher education, they don't see a substantial growth. This is information and technology, that is Educom and all those companies that are supplying e-knowledge packages. That's a very big growth industry to supply computer-based education systems. Coaching classes are growing at 15%, vocational 25%, books is growing at 10% because the internet has come in as a high competition. So this is a growing market. Vocational space is growing according to the Infrastructure Development Corporation. So the imperatives are, just to conclude this part of it, that with our need to achieve 100% primary school education, government funds will take that as a priority. Even if we double our GR to 20%, there's still 80% of the population, eligible population, who don't have a college education. Where do they go? The government has acknowledged that private sector has to help. There is this one sector where the government has acknowledged. This space, non-university, non-AICTE, is totally unregulated. It can be for profit. There is less control. But in the other cases, we have this not-for-profit idea that has come right from our independence, that education should not be a profitable business. But many private sector people have found their way around, because you can't expect the private sector to run a business for charity. They will give charity, but they first have to have a bottom line. They have to make profits. So some way or the other, the private sector comes around. But there is less control in the ET space. Unless employability of non-graduates are improved, their usefulness and therefore salary levels will continue to stagnate. If 30 million people are being added every year to the pool, and they are not educated and they still get the salary of unskilled people, there is going to be social tension in the country in the years to come. Because the demographic dividend is just starting now. For the next 20 years till 2030, they say that, we'll have the youngest population in the world. But the youngest population, not educated, not trained, will be an issue. And there has to be some self-respect after this training. Normally, the ITIs and others are not given due importance. This has something to do with our own family values and why we think an engineering degree or a graduation is better than a technical degree. There is this issue, there is this mindset which we need to take care of. Is there a shift in this? So from education we go to the vocational sector. This is the reality in the vocational sector. Out of the 6,800 schools offering vocational, only 40% of the seats are filled. Only 40%. The reason? The mother or the father thinks, you have to do a graduate school. Don't waste your time in vocational, study history, mathematics, geography, whatever, and write your exams, entrance exams, so whatever, school. But technical, no. This is one of the prime reasons for lack of interest in technical. Whereas in all developed economies, including Germany, I have statistics for that, it's just the opposite.